And I do want to throw this out here, a piece of really important analysis. Nate Hobbs has a phenomenal spoonerism. Do you like spoonerisms, Carl?
Yes, very much so.
Hate knobs.
Oh my gosh. Hello and welcome to Monkey Knife Fight Live, folks. I'm Connor Rowntree, and today we're talking Monday Night Football. That means we're joined by Fantasy Sports' very own Joe Dolan. Joe, how are you today?
I'm doing all right, man. Let's get to the analysis. Seems like we talk about the Raiders every week on this program because they're always on Monday Night Football. But I'm actually excited. I mean, this is a team. You know, the Chargers beat Chiefs last week. The Raiders are undefeated. So we're gonna have a fun one here. I mean, there's no two ways about it. I think there's gonna be a lot of fantasy matchups decided on this game. Obviously, plenty of intrigue for Monkey Knife Fight as well. So I think this is one where the Raiders are hot. Let's see if they can keep it up.
Well, speaking of hot teams, I mean, look at that defense on the Chargers, though, picking off Pat Mahomes twice last week, making him look human almost in the pocket back there, obviously getting pressure on him, forcing the plays, and then converting on those interceptions when they had the opportunity to do so. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, you just said it, that Raiders offense, they're averaging, Derek Carr averaging 401 yards through 3 weeks. Like, that's insane. And we were just looking at before coming on air, Tom Brady's 100 yards ahead of him for the season, and he's yet to play this week. So I think if we're looking at this matchup, it looks like it's going to have all the X factors of an explosive showing. But for some reason on Monkey Knife Fight, for whatever reason, I'm leaning towards the less and the less with the quarterbacks. I mean, looking at it starting out at 299.5 for Herbert and 290 for Derek Carr. Now it's up to 305 for Herbert and 294.5 for Carr. And it's just like, you know what? This Chargers defense, they picked off Patrick Mahomes twice. I said that. And then the Raiders pass defense, they've only allowed 2 passing TDs this season. So I think it could be a cheeky Austin Ekeler game, get some Raider running backs involved. But as far as these passing lines go, I could actually see the defense is stepping up. And I just think they're a little high for my comfortability. So I'm liking the less and less going into Monday Night Football right off the bat here, Joe.
I think that's a fair analysis. And here's the other deal with when it comes to the Chargers. 2 weeks in a row now, the Chargers have that split safety look. They don't play 8 guys in the box all that much. They have had 2 teams, the Cowboys and the Chiefs, decide we're going to run the ball against these guys. Zeke Elliott, Tony Pollard, Clyde Edwards-Helaire goes for 100 yards last week against the Chargers. And I think that's something where the Raiders might decide to attack. Now, the question becomes, who's going to be the back for the Raiders? Josh Jacobs is dinged up. Peyton freaking Barber out of nowhere looks like Walter Payton last week. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen there. Gruden, I think, is
Gruden
somebody
said he loved them. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
he's going to get the ball. So if Jacobs is active, this could be a nasty 3-man committee. Kenyon Drake is averaging just 2.1 yards per carry, but heading into week 4 was 4th among running backs in routes run. So, he's got that passing down work. But I agree with you. I think the run game could be important here. Here's the thing with the Chargers, though. While Austin Ekeler isn't a running back the way Josh Jacobs or Peyton Barber is. Like, he is screen passes, swing passes, angle routes. Those are an extension of the run game for the Chargers. And I feel like that's something that could add to Justin Herbert's passing total, even if he isn't chucking the ball down the field 20 yards. So that's one where I'm a little leery, but I kind of agree with you. That's a high number, that 305.5. I might take the less and the less here as well. I think it's just a little bit of a high number. Maybe 2 teams where everybody's excited. We're coming out. Oh, this is going to be a shootout. This is going to be back and forth. And maybe that does happen. Or maybe it's a 20-17 divisional slugfest between 2 teams who are looking to establish themselves in that division.
Well, really, realistically, I think that's what you really noted on the fact that divisional games for often or not always kind of seem the defenses always kind of seem to slap each other in the mouth a little bit harder in those games. And especially with Kansas City struggling, like this is really a stepping mark for this West division in the AFC to see who is the top dog after week 4. And it's almost weird to say that the conversations between Herbert and Carr as the 2 quarterbacks to look out for, especially coming into this season. But Derek Carr with John Gruden's guidance has taken a step forward in confidence, and his act, like he looks like a leader out there, ready to lead this team to the playoffs, and who knows where they go from there. Obviously, they're getting 30 points per game, so the shootout is an option. But I just, looking at the stats, looking how the defense line up against each other, I think both teams, and you hit it too, I think the run game will pay dividends for both teams there. So, folks, Joe and I both like the less and less here with the quarterbacks. You can scroll down, hit your selections, hit your buy-in, and hit submit to get in to win. And now one really interesting line, Joe, that I just want to keep flowing with that you brought up there was Austin Ekeler out of the backfield. His line on Monkey Knife Fight is 5.5 receptions, pardon me, and then 58.5 rushing yards. So if we start with the rushing yards now, Jason's got that up on the screen. We think it's going to be a run game. That's how the Raiders have been getting got, as they say. But again, 58.5 yards for a guy that's he's gone over 100 yards from scrimmage in back-to-back weeks. But as you said, he's more of a receiver in the backfield, and that's really his bread and butter in that offense. Oh, that's a tough line. I think I have to lean towards the more because of how I see the game going, and because of Las Vegas run defense versus their pass defense. They've given up 4 touchdowns to running backs this year. I think it could be Austin Ekeler out of the backfield catching it, as you said, or just right up the middle and catch them off balance. So I'm going to have to lean towards the more with Austin Ekeler.
Yeah, I agree. I lean towards the more here as well. I just think this is somebody who is going to get the ball. And I think the Chargers are going to maybe almost slow it down a little bit against that Raider defense. Now, keep in mind, the Raiders have Pro Football Focus's number 3 graded cover corner in the NFL. That's Casey Hayward. And I'm sure we'll talk about this when it comes to Mike Williams, but that's a tough matchup. Mike Williams has been awesome for fantasy. And if you're playing fantasy, in season long, no, you're not sitting Mike Williams. No, that would be freaking foolish. But I mean, you do have to acknowledge this could be a tougher matchup, which could lead to more, carries for Austin Ekeler. When it comes to Austin Ekeler as well, even down in the goal line area, it's important to note he's got 11 carries in the red zone compared to just 3 for Larry Rowntree and 2 for Justin Jackson. So he is their back everywhere. His snap share has risen in every game. It went from 58% to 63% to 74%. Austin Ekeler, he's not a bell cow in the way I think Derrick Henry is, because he's not going to carry the ball 35 times, but he's a bell cow in many other ways. And in many ways, he's a bell cow who's preferable for fantasy because of the passes he catches. I do think this line is a little low for somebody who might play upwards of 80% of the snaps in this game.
So we're liking the more on Austin Ekeler, and I like how the Monkey Knife Fight does this. One of my favorite things about MKF is that you can find matchups basically anywhere and whatever you like, and I like that more on Ekeler. And I'll tell you one thing, Darren Waller has at least 7 targets through all 3 weeks this season. And the Chargers this season have not looked great against tight ends. They've been getting got. You mentioned they're I think it's a matchup that is going to be exploited by Derek Carr. Well, I don't think he's going to throw for the X amount of yards. If you give Waller 7 targets, I think he can get 76 yards out of it. Yeah. I'm going to have to take more, especially with his size matchup. And the way that you alluded to right before was the way that the Chargers set up their defense. I think that's a great spot for a tight end to be right beneath those linebackers that are going in, above those linebackers, beneath the safety, that soft spot in the zone. That's going to be bread and butter for Derek Carr. And we've seen it. He's comfortable with Waller. So if it is a passing situation, I like Darren Waller to get his hands on the rock. Yeah.
So Darren Waller, I mean, obviously is just a phenomenal talent. And last week, the Chargers played Travis Kelce, 7 for 104. Unfair to really compare a tight end to Travis Kelce, but if there's somebody you're going to comp to Travis Kelce, Darren Waller's right there. 7 for 104 for Darren Waller in week number 3 for the Chargers. The Cowboys tight ends, Blake Jarwin and Dalton Schultz, had 5 catches against the Chargers. In week 1, Logan Thomas had a touchdown against the Chargers. So they have they've given up the 11th most fantasy points to tight ends this year. So I think this is something where you look at their defense and say it's gettable for the tight end. And while Darren Waller, it doesn't look like he hasn't probably produced the way people would have hoped after he saw 19 targets in week 1. Consider this. Derek Carr heading into week 4 led the NFL in passing yards. Okay. But despite that, they didn't have a single wide receiver who ranked in the top above the wide receiver 30 in fantasy points. That's Hunter Renfrow. Henry Ruggs is 31, and Brian Edwards is wide receiver 50, despite everything I'm hearing being that the Raiders love Brian Edwards. A lack of touchdowns has hurt him. But they mix the ball around. Darren Waller's the number one here. Don't make no mistake about it. I like the more for Darren Waller. If somebody gets the receiving production in this game for the Raiders, I think it's him.
Yeah, and one more note, you touched on how Los Angeles has been getting got by the tight ends, and that's kind of been our theme today, I guess, with expressions and not. But get this though, 25th most yards given up to tight ends this season. So I mean, they're getting destroyed. They're getting absolutely destroyed by the tight end, and Darren Waller will definitely add to that. Now, we're talking about Austin Ekeler earlier, and we can kind of stay on that because he's got another cool line with the receptions at the 5.5 mark. Now, if I'm looking at Austin Ekeler and I'm looking at how I think this game's going to go, I'm taking more on that, and I'm not blinking twice about it because I think Eckler's going to be getting those swing passes, going to be catching those screen passes. And Joe, I mean, do you have anything to add to that? Because we've really talked about Ekeler for the majority of this show when talking about the Chargers offense.
Well, the reason we're talking about Ekeler a lot when we're talking about the Chargers offense, first and foremost, is because the Chargers are an extremely narrow fantasy team. They really have, I mean, quite frankly, they have 4 guys you could consider for fantasy in Herbert, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and Austin Ekeler. And maybe you mix Jared Cook in there every now and again, but that's the reason we're talking a lot about Ekeler, because unlike the Raiders, there's not a ton of guys who actually get the ball on this team. Let's look at some of the Raiders numbers against running backs. They gave up 5 receptions to Ravens running backs, including their fullback Patrick Ricard in week 1. Okay. The Ravens running backs never catch the football. Najee Harris had 5 for 43 and a touchdown against the Raiders in week 2 through the air. And then in week 3, the Miami Dolphins, Myles Gaskin saw 6 targets. He caught just 3 of them. So they've been doing an all right job against running backs as receivers. I'm not really going to look at last week's game against the Dolphins as something where I'm like, well, they really shut Myles Gaskin down. I've taken the more for Austin Ekeler. I think the checkdowns might be an important part of this game. And they design passing plays for him that aren't checked down. So I'm going with the more here for Austin Ekeler. I think it is an Ekeler game.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. It's not even the check downs for me. It's the fact that they literally have passes designed in their offense with, as you said, it, the swing and whatnot. Now, Mike Williams' line 6.5. We're on this play, so we might as well take a peek at it. I mean, 6.5 yards. Then we can head over and look at his receiving line after this. But 6.5 receptions. Pardon me. I don't see that happening in a game where I think it's going to be a heavy dose of Ekeler. A couple Mike Williams deep shots. Heck yeah, that's why he's there. Go and throw it up to him. But I don't think they're going to do that 7 times. And if they do, I doubt he comes down with all 7 of them. Mike Williams, I'm going to have to go with the less on the 6.5 reception line.
I'm going with the less as well, but I do want to push back just a little bit.
Okay. 21
of Mike Williams' 31 targets this year have traveled 10 or fewer yards in the air. That's 68%. Last year, only 44% of his targets traveled 10 or few yards in the air. So they've kind of readjusted. Joe Lombardi, the offensive coordinator, has come in here and adjusted what Mike Williams is doing. He said, I see a Michael Thomas kind of player. Joe Lombardi was with the Saints for a number of years. That's how he's being used. And just quite frankly, a little more dynamically, because I think he's got more explosive ability than Michael Thomas. So they're using Mike Williams in that regard. That being said, it's possible he catches a Casey Hayward shadow. That is a battle to watch in this game. I'm taking the less on Mike Williams here. Doesn't mean, hey, fantasy-wise, not telling you to bench him. Doesn't mean he can't get in the end zone. I just think 6.5 receptions. What was the yardage? 82.5. It's a little juicy for me at this stage. I think this could be more of a Keenan Allen game, who, by the way, actually leads the Chargers in targets, despite Mike Williams being the number 2 receiver in all of fantasy.
Yeah, Mike Williams. Yeah, I think wow. I didn't even realize how good he was underneath in those coverages. It just seems like every time there's a highlight coming from the Chargers, it's Williams with a 20-yard, just absolutely insane catch, just breaking somebody's ankles on the outside and going in to score to the house. Oh, here's a fun one. Here we go. Well, Keenan Allen, we might as well talk about him and talk about Mike Williams, because we were just talking about those receiving cores. And we'll keep it with Mike Williams because you just mentioned it. You like the less on the 82.5. I'm with you on the less on the 82.5. If you want to add anything there, Joe, go ahead. But on the Keenan Allen side of things, I think if they are going to be using a wide receiver, it will be more of a Keenan Allen time, Keenan Allen scenarios. If he's getting those double-digit targets, I think he can catch 7 balls. Yeah. Again, I don't see a ton of the passing being in the original game plan, but you never know how a football game goes. And Keenan Allen being that number 1 guy on the outside, I like more on than his 6.5 target.
Yeah, so do I. Just keep this in mind. The Raiders coverage in the slot has been really good. Nate Hobbs is their nickel corner. He's limited his coverage responsibilities to the 3rd fewest yards per coverage snap, 5th fewest fantasy points per coverage snap, and 10th lowest targeted passer rating in the slot. Now, Keenan Allen is a little bit of a different kind of slot receiver. There's no doubt about it. And I do want to throw this out here, a piece of really important analysis. Nate Hobbs has a phenomenal spoonerism. Do you like spoonerisms, Colin?
Yes, very much so.
Hate knobs.
Oh my gosh.
Now that's what my wife, when she talks about me, that's what she does. She hates knobs.
My goodness.
No, he has a phenomenal spoonerism. That's one I'm gonna be thinking of tonight. Hate knobs. It's not as good as Latavius Murray, Mertavius Larry, which I'm really fond of that one too. But hate knobs is a great spoonerism.
Oh, we got to come back.
There's my analysis.
Well, I promise you next week when I see for Monday, I'll have my list of top 3 spoonerisms in NFL history. I'll go and make sure that we come in with a fire little segment off the top.
Let me just tell you, you're not top. Hate knobs is a good one. Percy Harvins is a beautiful one. Harvey Person.
That's like, that gives me, you know what that gives me? That gives me like Dark Knight vibes. Remember Harvey dead. Can we trust him?
Oh, let me tell you a joke. I'm going to tell you my favorite joke. Okay. So, what did Batman say to Robin before they got in the car?
I don't know.
Get in the car. There.
Oh, folks.
That's a party pleaser right there.
Oh, yeah. You actually got me in tears. I don't know if that's coming through on the HD quality content that we got here on this Twitch stream, but I'm in tears right now. Folks, I really like all these picks. Joe and I went through and broke them down pretty solidly for you. That's a 6 for 6, and I believe that's 40 times your buy-in. $2, why not? $80 just like that. Go down, select your buy-in, hit submit, and you're in to win. Joe Dolan, who do you like in this matchup? I believe it's a 3-point spread right now. Let's just look at this matchup as a whole and kind of give me a prediction, and I'll counter with one of my own.
I think the Chargers are going to win. If I had to, I'd lay the points. I don't have a read on that. I went 5-0 in player props yesterday. But I completely misread the Rams Cardinals game. I was on the Rams all day. I thought they were a better team coming in than the Cardinals. Totally misread that game. So I'm going to stay away from the side of this one.
I put out a pretty fire take before that game on Twitter about Kyler Murray being this year's MVP, and then he went out and did that. So that made me feel pretty good. But I'm leaning with you towards the Chargers tonight. I think that they have the more dynamic back in Ekeler. And I think that really will pay dividends when it comes to the slashing and gashing, the fact that he can get out of the backfield. And again, at the end of the day, the Chargers defense, if they can step up in Kansas City and pick off Patrick Mahomes twice, not so much pick him off, but force him to make those poor decisions and put him in situations where he's forcing the ball out of his hands. Yeah, give me that. I'll take the Chargers on Monday Night Football. Joe Dolan of Fantasy Sports, everybody. That's his beautiful face. Philadelphia Flyers fan in the background. Are you excited for hockey season just before we go?
I'm a little more excited than I have been because nice. The Flyers were bringing, for the last 5 years, the Flyers were bringing the same damn team back every week. Every year. And they switched some things up this year. They needed to get some fresh. I mean, they didn't tear it all down, but they
still got Carter Hart in the back. They got solid goaltending,
he struggled last year, but I think the defense was a huge problem. Yeah. You bring in Ryan Ellis, and I don't know about Rasmus Ristolainen. I'm not he's a guy who always, I think the sum is less than the parts, but I also know that the Flyers were disappointed they didn't have somebody who was willing to go out and mix it up last year.
Also, he's Ristolainen's Yeah, Ristolainen coming from Buffalo. I mean, you can't really.
Well, that's another thing. Like,
Exactly.
is Buffalo just that toxic situation? But you get Ryan Ellis. You know, I like the Cam Atkinson move, so I'm a little more excited for the Flyers this year than I have been in years past. It's always nice to have a nice distraction during the week as well. The Flyers, their goaltending situation, their defense last year was abominable, but I think it's going to be better this year.
There we go, folks. Defense is the story in Philadelphia and our story on Monday Night Football with the Chargers. Folks, I'm Connor Rowntree. That's Joe Dolan. Have a good one, and remember to hit it hard.